Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Ignite SAT Mastery course. Today, we'll be covering Lesson 4 of Module 5, Triangle Rules. Now, just as a refresher, what are these triangle rules questions? Now, they're going to look a little something like these kind of questions. And yes, I know they may be a bit confusing and a little hard to solve, but don't worry, we are going to dissect that. Now, there's two main indicators. Well, one, it's going to talk about a triangle. Well, in 19, specifically a right triangle. And the other, the actual shapes are going to represent triangles. And usually, you're going to see congruent angles and sides to indicate similarity. Now, let's try answering one of these triangle questions. Alright, 19. And a right triangle, one angle measures x, where sine x equals 4/5. What is cosine 90 minus x? Now, let's dissect this. It may be a little hard or, a little interesting to look at the beginning, but if we really play this out, we can see that it's very simple. So let's first dissect this. So we know that sine of x, because of SOHCAHTOA, the trigonometry rules, equals opposite over hypotenuse. We also know that cosine of x equals the adjacent over hypotenuse. Now, let's look at this right triangle. We know there's a 90-degree angle, and we know that one of these angles is x. So, because one of those angles is x, we can label the opposite 4 and the hypotenuse 5 in this case. Now, let's look at 90 minus x. And in this case, 90 minus x has to be the remaining angle. So what is cosine of 90 minus x? Well, we know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And if we look at that, the adjacent side is 4 and the hypotenuse is 5. So our resulting answer of cosine 90 minus x is actually 4/5. Now, how about you guys try answering a triangle question? Alright, now that you've had a chance to look at it, let's dissect this together. A summer camp counselor wants to find a length x in feet across a lake as represented in the sketch above. The lengths represented by AB, EB, BD, and CD on the sketch were determined to be 1800, 1400, 700, and 800 feet respectively. Segments AC and DE intersect at B, and angle AEB and angle CDB have the same measure. What is the value of x? Okay, this was a lot of information, so let's take it one at a time. We know that these two angles, AEB and CDB, are congruent to each other, and because they're the same angle measure as indicated by the triangles, we can make a lot of assumptions. We also know that there is an 1800, 1400, 700, and 800 feet respectively to AB, EB, BD, and CD. So let's just try plotting those. Now, those are the congruent angles, so we can make our measurements based on that. These two angles are also congruent, and you know what that tells us? That those two angles are also congruent, because two angles are congruent, the other ones have to be congruent as well. This is the congruency rules, and we can make a lot of assumptions based on that. So let's label this. These are all the sides, and we know that the direct opposite line segments are actually going to be scalars of each other. They're going to be related in some sort of proportion. Now, if we look at the 700 and 1400 on EB and BD, we can see that 1400 to 700 is actually a times 2, operation. Now, we know that DC and AE actually line up, so that means to get from DC to AE, we also have to multiply by times 2, and therefore we will get our answer of 1600. Now, let's look at some tips when answering these triangle questions. First thing to do is recognize what it's asking. Is there a right triangle involved? Is there a congruent triangle statements? Do you need to know the SAS or other kinds of theorems to figure them out? The law of cosines and sines might be some as well. And know that you will need to either interpret or draw a triangle yourself just to answer these questions. You're also going to have to know these rules. Now, there's a big list of rules, and they will also be in your practice, just so you have them. And finally, if you have all of these information, you should be able to solve every single SAT Math triangle question. Now next time, we're going to look at circle rules on the SAT Math section.